The timeline keeps twisting, and secrets from the past keep getting revealed. So, what does episode 6 of Trigun Stampede hold for us? Well, let's find out.
Fash! Fash, fash, fash! The Stampede!
So, in the cold opening, just as the show is getting started, we see Wolfwood kind of up on this ridge, up on a horizon, and he gets blasted with bullets. But then he drinks this like blue liquid from a vial. And this is where my old memory is starting to let me down. So I'm going to ask you guys to help me out here. Has this vial with the healing potion kind of thing in it, has this been around or is this new? And I guess we'll go straight to you, Matthew. You're the person that I think might most likely have an answer in the pocket for this one.
This has been around. It was original manga material.
Chris, did you remember this at all, or did you kind of have that same question I had about whether
I have to admit I did not remember that.
Good, so I'm not alone.
I was trying to think. It was very reminiscent of something else, and I was trying to think of like the little vials, and I was trying to think of like where I was remembering that from, but I couldn't think of which anime it was from.
Let me tell you what I think it might have been. I think it might have been reminding you of the vials with the eye drops in Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, but I just even the shape of the vial, like even the shape of the vial, and how you had to bite the top off, and it's glass like that. That is from something else, and I can't figure out what it is, but it is from something else.
You know, the shape reminded me of the file of Galadriel from the Rankin Bass Return of the King.
Oh, wow. That is the Rankin Bass Return of the King. I was watching the Rankin Bass Hobbit the other day, but I haven't made it to the Return of the King in years. I'm going to have to go revisit that. But the little glass vial like that with the top that's kind of pointed that you break off, that's called an ampule. And that is a real thing that some medicines come in. I mean, it's less and less common, kind of more of an outdated way to do it, but that is a thing that exists out there. So I kind of recognized the packaging, but I didn't have any memory of this magic healing potion. So I'm glad, Chris, that at least it's not just me like getting old and senile, that you're old and senile.
Oh no, that's still the case, but no, you are, in this case, you're excused. It's fine.
Now, are either of you guys familiar with the state flag of New Mexico? Chris, you're up in Canada. I don't know. Do you know the difference in many state flags?
I know there's 50 of them. And I think Puerto Rico has one. Guam may have one as well. I mean, Guam may have one. But no, I couldn't. You couldn't. Actually, the only one I probably could pick out is West Virginia. I probably can get that one. But past that, no. Like I got no idea. I couldn't tell you what the provincial flag of Ontario looks like, let alone some state flag in New Mexico.
Well, you're a little bit closer geographically to New Mexico, Matthew. Have you ever seen the New Mexico state flag?
Plenty of times, but if you ask me to describe it, I won't be able to do it.
Because when I see that like logo or that symbol for the Eye of Michael,
now I remember.
It looks like the Mexico state flag to me. So I was hoping one of you guys could commiserate with me about how weird it is when I keep thinking that this is the New Mexico state flag popping up in Trigun Stampede. Like it's really distracting at first when it hit me.
I have no comment for this portion of the episode because I couldn't. I know that I think that the state flag of Texas might have a star on it, but past that I don't know.
It's got a star and a cowboy hat with 2 6-shooters.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's Hardee's ripped off their state flag. So. Anyway, the Eye of Michael, I think that logo looking like New Mexico kind of tracks, though, with the old Trigun really trying to have like a Western feel to it. Because where I come from, we consider New Mexico to be out west. I don't know if you consider New Mexico out west or not, Matthew, but definitely it's considered out west for us guys, that live as close to Myrtle Beach as I do.
Yeah, I consider it to be that way. And, I can't resist a little research, but the symbol is based on the Puebloan people.
Oh, nice. So there is... wait, which symbol was based on it? The New Mexico symbol?
Yes.
Or the Trigun symbol?
Maybe both.
Okay.
Technically.
God bless them. I love the Pueblo people, and if their symbol makes it all the way to the world of Trigun... Huzzah! Good for
There's
you,
there's
fine
there's
folks.
there's probably some significance that people smarter than me know about with it.
Chris, you want to give us your 2 cents on the Pueblo symbol in Trigun?
I can't talk about the symbol, but for some reason, I remember watching a cartoon in like the 80s or 90s that would always bring up something to do. I don't know why, because I don't think I've thought about this in 30 something years, but I swear there was a cartoon that had some kind of an announcement at the end about like Pueblo, like something about that. And I
Yes,
don't know what it
here's
is.
what it is. During the 80s, there was a company that did transcripts for TV shows. And if you wanted to order the transcript, which they just sit and they type out everything that happens on the show, you would send like back then is probably $3 and a self-addressed stamped envelope to this place in Pueblo, Colorado. And
Okay,
they would send
okay, there
so
you
that
go.
was it. Yes,
All
I
right,
remember
okay.
all my life hearing about Pueblo, Colorado, to get the transcripts from your favorite.
Okay,
TV
so
show.
I'm not crazy. Like that's the only reference I have for Pueblo is that I guess I could have got transcripts of the Flintstones from.
And thank goodness none of us are really old enough that we ever paid for a transcript. But I guess like in the days before you could just VCR and record your favorite show, you're like, oh, that was a great episode. I got to get the transcript so I can read it in bed at night whenever I want. You know, there's no recording technology. There's no on demand. So yeah, I'm going to get that's funny. I'm going to order the transcript for Trigun Stampede and they're just going to send me the manga for Trigun Maximum. The anime is like the reverse transcription. Oh man, I got way off track on that question. Your answer is just too darn good, Chris. So let me go back to the notes here and try to get us back on back on target here. Here's a question for you guys: were Gosef, Rolo, and Livio all subjects of the same sort of experiment from Millions Knives?
Unlikely Gosef, unless
Yeah,
they
I was
really
gonna
change
say-
things up.
I was gonna say Rolo and Livio are, but not Gosef.
You think that's all Professor Nebraska, Dr. Nebraska on Gosef?
Yeah, I don't think they changed that any.
Okay, because I've just started to look, and you know, in the past, I never considered Gosef to be part of the Gung Ho Guns team. But then when I look at how he looked and the way he was a cyborg here, and then I think of the way Rolo looked, and then the way that Livio looks, and then you know, you want to extend that on out to the way that Wolfwood looks. It looks like the earlier ones were more monstrous, and as Knives refined it, they begin to be more and more human-like. And that's what made me think maybe Gosef was something with Knives, and that's part of that bitterness there with Professor Nebraska. Like maybe there's a whole nother layer to the Nebraska story here that we haven't, you know.
I don't know. I think like for me, it seems like they're tying the experiments, let's call them, together
yes.
with. There's always like a blue light or a blue haze. Like if you look at it, like Rolo, his helmet was blue, right? Like he's like, you know, it was blue. Like Livio's got the blue eye, as he saw in this episode. When Nicholas pulls out his giant gun, right?
Yes,
It's got the blue
the
lights
Punisher.
on it, right? Like every.
Yes.
So I feel, and then when you saw, well, the guy who shows up in this episode, which I know Matthew is excited about because I saw it on Twitter. You know, there's a like almost like a blue aura that comes off of him. So it's almost like I feel like they're using that blue to kind of pull all those people together, which is like the blue in the plant, right? The blue plants, they have that same blue hue to it. Whereas if you looked at Gosef,
He didn't have
He
that
didn't.
blue hue.
right?
You know
That
what?
was a great
Chris?
catch, Chris.
I just want to take I wish I had worn a hat so I could say hats off to you, Chris. That's one of the best observations that I think we've had so far this season about that glowing light and that kind of tell. I think that was excellent. And that one totally, I missed that 100%. So good job, man. Good job on that catch. So let's go ahead here, Matthew. I'm not really following, you know, beat by beat the way the show went because there's just some cool things to talk about. And I want to talk a little bit more about mood than specifics. But before we go on to that, just like for legacy purposes, what would you say is the legacy name of Livio's character here in monster form?
Livio.
Okay, I didn't know if he had like a monster name. Because
You're just like because of
Well-
like how Rolo had whatever his name
Monev.
was.
Yeah, like Rolo was
Yeah.
Monev.
Well, there
maybe-
is sort of a related question, and that is we have Livio. Does that mean we'll get to see Raslo?
Okay, that I guess is maybe what I was trying to set you up for, was to talk about the meaning of this character from the old anime, which is no guarantee that it's what we'll
No,
see here,
he
but
didn't show up in the
but
old anime, just the manga.
okay. Just in the manga. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
what I was kind of curious about, because you really had all that nice nuggets of knowledge about Monev that I didn't have before. So I didn't know if there was any of that good stuff brewing just below the surface here on this one too.
I got nuggets. It's true.
Well, guys, what did you think of the sand steamer? Or did you keep wanting to call it a sand crawler, Matthew?
I did not. So far, I spent this series wondering, okay, I spent this series so far thinking they can't skip the sand steamer stuff. Surely they won't skip that. So I was incredibly happy to see that they didn't this week, because this was always a major part, a major little side adventure in the series.
And I always just kind of like the concept of like, oh, there was a show on Netflix that was adapted from a book, and I can't remember now the name of the book series, but it's like they have these ships that sail the sea of dust or the sea of sand. And they had like this show like maybe last year, came up on Netflix. It was pretty cool, like Shadow and Bone or something like that. And then also I can think on back maybe to something like Mortal Engines.
Yeah, I was going to say Mortal Engines is kind of very similar with the city ships, right?
The whole
Right.
the whole city just moves around from and Howl's Moving Castle just a little bit, maybe
Yeah,
something like
sure.
that. Not to be confused with the Castle in the Sky, but yeah, I kind of got a big time Sandcrawler feeling though. I was looking for Jabba's team to be around. You know, I was looking for Sarlacc pits, which
wanted
those
to hear,
worms are close to that. Yes. So I do like Livio's guns, and I like the way Livio's guns, they're like so similar to Wolfwood's gun, but they're also fundamentally different. You know, like they're alike enough to know like there's an organizational tie here, there's some cultural through lines here, but where they come from, these are considered very, very different things. You know, I really like the way that they managed to capture sort of that duality of how two things look alike to an outsider that look very different to an insider. I like the way they did that with the guns for Wolfwood. Did you have any thoughts about Livio's guns there, guys?
I've always loved him.
Yeah, I do think it's kind of neat that clearly one's basically a sniper rifle and the other one's like, for more close combat stuff. So it also seems to lend themselves to, whereas like you could see the fighting style with Livio when he's when he's like in close quarters with Vash, and he's able to like maneuver, whereas Wolfwood not so much. He's got to get his time to kind of set up his massive sniper rifle and
Yes.
pop holes in people's heads. But he needs some space. Although he's obviously capable, it lends to a different type of fighting style. So it's that's kind of neat.
And the whole time that the combat was taking place between Livio and Wolfwood and all the stuff around it, in my mind, I just kept thinking like this would be the perfect thing for Robert Rodriguez to direct. Do you agree with that at all, Matthew?
I can see that.
The
Same
guns,
sort of,
I mean,
you
he'd have
could,
so much fun with
yeah.
the religious imagery, the guns. This is like El Mariachi Part 2.
Well, or part 6 or something.
Yeah, I can't count that high in French, which is weird for a Spanish language movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, here is a quote that I read from one of my favorite online reviewers of this show, talking about Wolfwood in this episode and how since Wolfwood has entered the show, how much he's just demanded our attention. And here's a quote from this person. It says, Wolfwood has been a combative counterpoint to Vash's unending optimism towards life. Now, I've certainly had a lot of fun with the interplay between these two and with the chemistry between each other. I didn't necessarily look at it as a counterpoint against the optimism, but should I have been seeing it that way? I mean, is that how you see the interplay between the two of them, Matthew?
I haven't really been thinking about it, but it does make a sort of sense to me.
Chris, do you think Wolfwood is the pessimism to balance Vash's optimism?
Yeah, and I think you can see that, and I can see that's why they seemingly have an issue. They act like they have an issue with each other, is because of the way they view things. Like even though Wolfwood had it pretty awful, right? He was he was in the orphanage.
Yeah.
He was he's went through all of that, you would kind of assume that would leave you. He tried to, they showed the one scene in the episode where he's escaping and they just like blow him through, like fill him through full of holes. And, that's how they stop him, because they know they basically just pop the medicine in him and boom, off he goes. Like he's fine again.
Yeah.
So they didn't really worry about it. They see, he gets his bones snapped, like every single one of them, like as if he's on Stranger Things.
Oh yes, that was great.
You could assume, you could see why he would have a pessimistic outlook on things, but then you also, if you look at Vash, he should have a pretty pessimistic look on things, and he doesn't, which is probably why there's a bit of a personality conflict between them, because Vash should be pretty pessimistic and not a really big fan of everything, of life, let's say, in general. And meanwhile, he's out there, still with a fairly optimistic, outlook. So
that's because Vash is the personification of faith.
Do you think it would be too much of a stretch to say a theme of brother versus brother might permeate this series?
I was hoping you were going to say spy versus spy. Like, I was thinking
better.
I was just waiting for them to get the really big hats. That's what I was looking for.
Now, some of the characters here are looking at a picture of Vash from 20 years ago, and they're saying, like, what kind of freak doesn't age in 20 years? And it made me think, is there a chance that in this version of Trigun, Vash is a vampire? Matthew.
There's been enough differences in this one to previous versions that I'm not going to say it's not an impossibility.
Chris, Vampire Vash?
Hey, why not? Like, I don't know
Vash
if that's part of the original manga, but like that would be a spin for everybody if all of a sudden he just starts like chewing on Meryl's neck. You know what I mean? Like if he just out of nowhere, it was like, oh, well, we didn't see that coming. Nobody would. So, hey, why not? Throw us a curveball.
It turns into full-on Twilight in season 3. We find out Roberto De Niro is a werewolf. Oh, it's all.
I mean,
awful.
sort of technically, there has been a werewolf. What am I thinking? There has been a vampire Vash in the Abel Night Road from the Trinity Blood series.
Well, it's time to get to the meat of this episode, what I'm really dying to talk about, and that has to do with all of this flashback and this look back at Wolfwood. And how he got to be where he's at here. And there's this remarkable tonal shift in the animation with Wolfwood's flashbook scenes. Did you like that? Did you like that style?
I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I did too. And I think one of the real things about it too is that I like when an anime will do that, or even in a movie, let's say, where when you are into a different like time frame or a look back, it's different, right? Like it's different because of the way that it's set up. Whereas opposed to when we saw the like the Rolo episode, where it took a while to figure out what was kind of going on, because like is it two stories that are going to intertwine, or is it like, which we found out later, it was like 20 years ago, right? Where this one you knew right away, like this is a flashback. And you didn't have any questions, and I like that. I think it makes things a little easier to like, kind of follow.
And I feel like Orange was kind of strutting their stuff a little bit, like kind of saying, hey, yeah, we're known for the computer animation and the somewhat 3D style cell animation blend, but look, we can do like traditional old school style too and do a great job of it. So
Yeah.
I kind of like that too. It's Orange saying, like, we choose to animate the way we do. We're not forced to do it. This is our artistic choice. I kind of liked it for that too. And I did see those flashbacks described as rough looking line work and crosshatch shading to give them a historic feeling. But what really gave it the historic feeling to me is the way they were arranged, organized like an old silent movie. I don't know the last time you guys have ever, like, just for kicks, watched like an old silent movie like Charlie Chaplin or Nosferatu or something. And, they have just a few seconds of on-screen action. Then you have a title card that just comes up and takes the whole screen to tell you, a caption of whatever happened in the previous thing or what's happening in the next one. And this really had that silent movie feel that seriously gave you that throwback to make me think time might work a little bit differently for these guys than it does for me.
Yes, it was quite lovely.
Now, did you find this backstory with Wolfwood to be an acceptable explanation for his gruff personality? I mean, he's had it rough, but boy, his personality's pretty rough too.
Yeah, I think considering what we saw, what happened, I mean, you grow up in an orphanage, you get taken, you get, experimented on, then you're held in a cage, you try to escape, they fill you full of holes, throw you back in a cage, or after they've broken, no, they, no, they fill you full of holes, you still keep trying to escape, then they break every bone in your body, throw you back in the cage, then continue to break all your bones, and slam you up and down against the floor. Like, you'd be pretty bitter. Like, and that's just one instance, right? So that it wasn't the only time he ever tried to escape. So like, this guy's been tortured basically since he was a child. Yeah, that would lead you. I would believe that would lead you to be pretty gruff.
Okay, guys, now hear me out here. This is my own theory on imagery, and we've been talking about religious imagery a lot ever since Wolfwood walked in with his big cross-shaped gun dressed like a priest. But you have said a few times, Matthew, that Vash is like the Trigun Jesus.
Yeah.
But we do see Wolfwood kind of crucified on a cross when Millions Knives is doing what he's doing to him. But it's an upside down cross, which like the upside down cross has its own religious connotations, sort of a rejection of, what the traditional cross represents. And it makes me wonder if Vash is the Christ figure, then is Millions Knives the Satan figure, and he's trying to make Wolfwood into his antichrist. I don't know, but man, all this stuff started popping through my head. Way more religious thought than I normally have when I'm watching television. You guys have any thoughts on that upside down cross that Wolfwood was tortured upon?
I'd have to ask Night Owl himself, but I think you're about on the money with all that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty bang on. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I was trying to think of something witty to come up with, but I couldn't. So yeah, I'm going to say I'm just going to go with I think you're pretty close. Yeah.
Now, did you guys get a little confused on the timeline with some of the flashbacks? Because I got a little confused, and some of it might just be me not understanding how aging and time is working for some of these characters. But it seemed like Livio and Wolfwood were both little kids. But then Wolfwood looked like an adult and Livio still looked like a little kid. And then they both look like adults. Did I miss something weird there with the aging? Can you help me, Matthew?
You must have. They say that a side effect of the drugs was Wolfwood prematurely aged.
Okay. I did kind of miss part on that one, but I wondered if there was some aging involved here. So, but he didn't mentally age.
Right.
So it's kind of like Vash,
except
so childlike, even though he's very old.
Yeah, we don't know how much time has passed between him suddenly having an adult's body with a child's mind and now, really.
So, oh man, I never even thought about that. Did Rollo age extraordinarily quickly?
Most likely.
Because when they see that picture of Vash holding like the child Rollo and they say, what kind of freak doesn't age in 20 years? Well, maybe it's because it was only 3 years ago and Rollo aged too quickly. Okay, sorry.
Well, yeah, but with Rollo, like when you saw his actual face, his face looked a lot older than somebody who you'd say would be like 28 or something, right? Like,
yeah.
When you would assume Rollo was a 7-8 years old kind of when he ran away.
Yeah.
So to say he'd be 28, he looked a lot older than 28. Like he looked like he was in his 50s, like.
Yeah. Of course, that desert sun, if you don't have sunscreen, 28-year-olds can look 50.
You get leathery, very leathery.
Get the Obi-Wan Kenobi treatment.
The Leatherly brothers. Yeah, because Ewan McGregor really had some harsh sun in those few years he was in the desert, didn't he?
Yeah.
Speaking of the Obi-Wan treatment, when those Raiders showed up at the end, what is the name of that gang? I've already forgotten.
The Bad Lad gang, baby.
The Bad Lad?
The Bad Lads, yes.
Yeah, the Bad Lads. Well, when they showed up, I'm loving the way they're drawn here because they look so much like a mixture between Raiders from Tatooine and then like some Joel Schumacher Gotham City street gang. Like,
it reminded me straight up of like Mad Max. That's what it reminded me of.
Except it's like Mad Max with
With
the touch of those
neon.
Joel Schumacher street gangs from Batman and Robin and Batman Forever. It definitely had a Schumacher feel to it, and I couldn't help it, man. I loved it. I was thinking bat nipples the whole time I saw it.
I just hope so hard that they will include their leader in the next episode.
I hope his name is Bat Nipples. I mean, that could be the name of the next episode.
Wouldn't that be interesting? Here's our fearsome leader, Bat Nipples. Oh gosh, he strikes fear into the hearts of men.
But for me, at this point, 6 episodes in, halfway through this first course, I'm really feeling the pain starting to take its toll on Vash. I'm pretty impressed with how much I'm feeling in just 6 episodes of development on that pain, and how I've seen him go from the fun-loving Vash that was more stereotypical of Vash from the previous version of the anime to this heavier heart that I'm seeing more and more of now. Do you think that the emotional weight of the show is overshadowing the action? And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, I think that the emotional weight is even more impressive to me than the action, which is impressive.
That's a good question. I'm trying to ignore that stuff. I mean, as we've talked many times over the years, I don't like my entertainment very heavy. I don't like my entertainment serious. I like to see like ridiculousness. Like that's my favorite. My favorite type is just silly, fun. I mean, I feel like it's definitely missing that comedic element that the original had, which I do have to say I miss. I did. That's the one thing that's really not hitting the mark with me, is that it's not there. They've definitely gone with a more serious tone overall. Which is probably closer to the manga from what I'm gathering, but so I'm trying to focus on the action. The action's great. So I'm trying to focus there. All this stuff, all this emotional mumbo jumbo garbage, I'm trying to like put out of my mind and just watch the shoot 'em ups. That's kind of where I am.
Matthew, I'm gonna venture a guess that you have a different point of view.
Yeah. I mean, it's no surprise. Most people, if you ask them, love the more lighthearted tones of the original series, but I've always been about the heavier stuff. That's, the part that engages me emotionally.
And that's kind of what I guess. That's where I guess you're going to come down on. And I think I'm a nice 50-50 split. So I like it that we're getting a little bit of both. And I'm a sucker for visuals, and the show's given us plenty of good visuals.
Especially in this episode.
We're at that moment, Matthew, where I have to know, did you cry during this episode?
When we had the image of Crybaby Livio and Nico Ni holding hands.
Wow, that was pretty touching, but I didn't cry. Chris, how many times did you cry during this episode?
I have yet to shed a tear in the 6 episodes because I'm just focusing on the gunfights. Like, that's it. Like, so there's no reason for me to. But you know what we haven't talked about? We didn't bring up a certain person's name. We talked about him. We alluded to him.
Go ahead. Let's open up.
But I want to get Matthew's excitement about this, because I know I saw a couple of comments on Twitter and I know he's pretty excited. So I want to hear that. I want to hear what that was like when you saw him.
Well, let me reproduce my reaction to this part of the show. Wolfwood leaps towards the window. He's going back to the orphanage. Suddenly, his hand starts contorting and twisting into this hideous shape, and I went like this. Legato.
There, that's what I was waiting for.
Legato Blue Summers.
Legato. Yeah. Man, I like that. When William, is it spoiling much just to say the name William Conrad? Isn't that the guy's name, William?
That is. I have less complaints over Roberto De Niro now that I've remembered that's a guy too.
When I first saw that character, William, I thought that maybe the little girl with him was going to be Legato. I really didn't know what was going to go down here.
Now that is, it hadn't been brought up between us yet, but that's supposed to be Elendira the Crimson Nail.
Okay.
But she's way different than any previous version.
So we'll just have to see how that unfolds then. But yeah, I would thought that was going to be Legato. And then, you see the blue hair. I guess that's got to be like Legato Blue Summer. And Zazie even shows up just for the heck of it to remind us that Zazie's still out there.
I'm really enjoying this version of Zazie.
Well, with that, I'm going to say 6 episodes in, still no Millie. But I'm proud of you for watching anime, and we'll talk to you again soon.
I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon. It really means a lot to me. If you might be interested in Patreon perks like early access to videos, uncut reaction videos, ad-free videos, and the opportunity to vote on which anime will be covered in the future, then click on the link in the video description. Thank you.